a much better angle. This is good. Okay, start.
You gotta get that power angle.
Yeah. Start again.
Alright, colors surged around me. Andrew and I came through to
Wait, what are you talking about? Where? This is like...
the beginning of the chapter.
Years out. No. You gotta start way earlier than that.
I filmed the last months before that already.
Well, I was not here to see it, and clearly you had the filming all wrong, so let's start over. Need some backstory.
So there I was, doing yard work for Darren.
Yeah, that's much better, yeah. Took you long enough.
Yeah, good thing you chose an easy spot.
Chapter 11. Andrew and I pulled on gloves as we stepped up into the rubble. It was my turn to help out today with the clearing out, and Andrew wanted to join me, so we got together and started hauling out concrete. I started moving some of the bigger pieces as he worked on some of the smaller ones as we piled them up onto one of the transports. As we worked, we talked and asked, "Hey, how's the week? Nice to be Saturday, right?" He's like, "Yeah, it's nice. School, I mean, this year it's a whole lot about colleges and deciding careers and all that. None of that stuff really applies to me, but he really thought he was going to be a traveler one day." I said, school or life after school isn't really as fun as it sounds. I mean, I kind of miss school. It's a whole lot of just boring meetings and things. And he said, "Well, for a seer, maybe for the Emperor, but for a normal traveler like Scar, she's got a great life." Okay, Scar did have a much more exciting life than I did. And I kind of laughed about that as I hefted a massive piece of concrete. I sired for all of this stuff. Well, no, I started by hand just to feel like I was doing something physical. And then I lifted a massive piece of concrete and settled it down in the transport. The thing shook but held up in the air with the slab of concrete on it. And Andrew paused and just stared at it for a minute before shaking his hand and saying, "Man, that is still crazy to me. How do you do that?" And I said, "It's still pretty crazy to me too. It's strange to wake up and find myself Emperor of Saramea, and to think that I can do all of these different things." And Andrew said, "How do you do that? That thing was like 20, 50, I don't know, a lot bigger than you are. How are you able to lift that thing? Where did the power come from?" And I said, "It's hard to explain, but all of the points, like every point that you see around you is connected to other worlds along strings that connect every reality. And when things in the world move, those points move along the strings, which causes energy and I'm able to take that energy and release it into points and move them. Andrew said, I didn't get half of that. I said, basically, there's latent energy in the universe, and I'm able to access it as a sire. He said, man, that is so incredible. Your powers are so cool. The fact that you have powers at all. He said, are, like, what about things in other worlds? Could you move those? Or could you move in between the strings and not be in any world at all? And I thought, those are interesting questions. I said, I have no idea. I'd love to test things out, but there's still just so much more to do where I'm kind of in charge of everything. It stops me from experimenting a lot. He says, well, man, you gotta do that. He says, like, what kind of things are you working on? I said, well, you remember my neighbor, Darren? The one who tried to stop me from traveling? It's like, oh yeah, because he like knew about your siring. Right. He said, yeah, you can understand why I just get frustrated thinking about him. And Andrew said, I don't know, I feel like he kind of knows what's going on. I mean, didn't he know that you were going to lose control? And, like, didn't he try to stop you when you were going to destroy that geyser park that would have caved into my scry? And I said, you don't understand. You've been talking to Scar, haven't you? And he said, okay, yes, she's kind of told me a little bit about what's going on. But I mean, how bad could it be to re-befriend him? And I said, Andrew, this isn't like a book or a movie. This is real life. It's not easy like that. I'm not ready for it, and I just can't trust him. And Andrew said, well, I mean, it'd be kind of nice to have like, if he is a traitor, to have him close and recognize what's going on. I said, yeah, but then he's going to see my plans, and I still just don't know what I'm going to do. And Andrew said, well, what if he is just trying to figure things out? And he held up his hand before I could say anything. He said, I'm not saying that's what's happening. I'm just saying it's something to think about. From everything that I've heard, I don't think it'd be a bad idea. And he continued to pick up rubble, and we moved some more things as I just thought about it all. Once we'd filled up this transport, one of the workers went to the controls and glided away from the site. And there were some other ones. There were a whole bunch of other workers with us as well, and they were filling up other things. And a number of the transports were being taken, so we went to take a quick break, got a drink, and ate a little bit of a snack. And Andrew went to the workers and spoke in halting Saramayan. He had a mobile of his own at this point, but he wanted to master the language, and he'd put in some good work. He still didn't get his right, but he told a joke and the workers laughed at it, and it was cool to see him really taking to Saramea the way that he did. After a little bit of a break, we got back to work. The stone transporter was gone, and workers were just filling up one of the metal ones, so we went back to the plot and started working on all of the ISO that was there. Andrew got a bag, and I got a small transporter. And we went around picking up pieces. He focused on all of the smaller stuff and getting it out of the wreckage while I worked on the bigger things. Some of them were still as large as I was, anchors that used to hold up buildings. And most of them were purple, though there were other colors as well that were around. There were still a few greens and some of other colors that I didn't really know about a ton. But we worked on those, and Andrew said, I've been thinking about my traveler name, because, I'm going to need a cool name like you guys if I'm going to travel. I said, Andrew, not everyone has traveling abilities. I mean, you can think about that, great, but don't get too excited. I said, I've been thinking about Starblight, or maybe the Century. I said, traveler names are usually an abbreviation, so yours would have to be like EU or something like that. And he laughed at that. I said, I know not everyone has traveling abilities, but Scar said that everyone has the traits in them, and as they grow stronger, you get the ability. And I'm pretty adventurous, so I think I've got to get it at some point. I said, well, if it's up to sheer determination, if it were up to sheer determination, you would absolutely be a traveler. And he said, that's not good enough. Gee. He said, after seeing all this, I can't just go back to Earth and live a boring, normal life. I need to be here with you guys and do the things that you're doing. He said, well, the Profithiers had technology that enabled them to travel. We might be able to get something like that to work for you, if nothing else. And that was enough for him. He was super excited about the thought of that. And we continued to talk as we worked. After working through a bunch of the ISO, we got it onto a transport, and I did some more of that as Andrew moved on to getting cloth and organics that were there. And we worked our way all around the plot. We'd gotten a whole lot of it. And we'd gotten the heaps of rubble down slowly. There was still a fair amount there, and I encouraged the rest of the workers to start on the next plot and get the debris and separate things out while I finished up on this plot. I closed my eyes to be able to sire better as I felt out for all of the rubble and pulled it from the piles, dispersing it to different transporters. It absolutely helped to close my eyes and block everything out, especially when I was moving a lot and doing very complicated things like this. I worked a lot faster when I was just on my own and quickly separated things out onto transporters and let them go out and come back. And down at the bottom, things were really a lot more tightly packed, almost like Earth itself, but it wasn't exactly like Earth, and so I still worked to pull it up out of the ground, free it, and get down to really that base level so that we could have sturdy foundations for everything that we built. We continued to work through the afternoon, and ended up finishing around 4 o'clock, which was a lot better than usual. We'd also taken on more plots than general. Just having a sire there very much helped, and the work had really started going a lot faster since we'd had a sire on every team to start working, so there was at least one working every day. The city was getting cleaned up, and it was incredible. And there was still plenty to do, but the entire main area had been cleaned out, and there were plots being placed for building and construction, which was expanding, and it was just so exciting to see. By the time that we finished our allotted plots, I had a headache, and it was pretty painful. It didn't take a lot of concentration to sire, but very complicated siring took a lot of mind power, and I was just glad to have something because I knew the rest of the workers would be sore in the morning. After we finished, Andrew and I headed back to the Keltis to just relax for the rest of the day. And after we'd cleaned up, Scar and Andrew were playing a game. Andrew took Scar's last elephant, and she looked at the board, confused at how she was losing so badly. My headache was mostly dissipated by later on in the evening, and it was fun to watch Scar getting pummeled so bad. After a couple of minutes, Andrew took her king, and she stood up. She said, "Man, Savas is hard," and sat down next to me, grabbed my arm and put it around her shoulder. And Andrew said, "Do you want to play another game?" She said, "No, 3 losses is enough for me." And I said, "Well, in that case, I've got something to say." Andrew packed up the game and came around, sitting next to us on the leather couch. The furniture had been brought in from Earth, so it felt a little bit homey, though the lighting was different. I said, "I've made a decision. We're gonna talk to Darren. We're gonna take him in." And Scar got really excited at that. She said, "Really, you mean it?" And I said, "Yeah." I opened up my scabbard, which was awkward from this position, but I opened it up and managed to pull out the orange box thing that he'd given me. And I handed it to Scar, and she said, "What is this?" And I said, "I don't know." He said, "Only you'd be able to solve it, but it'll tell us how to get to him." She picked up the box and looked at it. She turned the box and focused on it, and one of the metal pieces in the grooves slid along to the end. And she looked around, because there were grooves in every direction, and she'd examine it for a moment and move a metal piece, mentally move a metal piece, and then go around and get through the whole box. And after a minute, she set the box down and said, "All right, looks like we're headed to Arrakis." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a sheet of paper. As I looked over, it had the names of a whole bunch of worlds, and each world had 1 or 2 objects. Some had a few more. And after scanning down the list for a little bit, she put it back into her pocket and pulled out an hourglass. And she said, "This isn't going to get us super close, so we'll probably have to rent a thopter. Get your cloaks and water ready." She landed the thopter, which I still don't know how she was able to pilot. Scar still is so impressive to me. But she landed it down in the sand right in front of a rock formation. It was small, but definitely large enough to hold a hiding place. As we got off and got up onto the rock formation, I pulled my face covering closer. The wind wasn't too bad, but there was sand blowing around. As we hiked our way up the rock face, as we came down into a cleft, I saw, protected and hidden, a small hole in the rock. It had a green glowing film over the front. And as we came up, Scar started calling for Darren, and a few moments later the film disappeared and Darren's head popped out. He saw us and hopped down the green film. We're going back up after him. And Scar ran and gave him a hug. He smiled, and then he saw my face, impassive, and said, "I assume you've come to a consensus?" And I said, "Yes, but if we change our minds about anything, you leave." He nodded. He said, "I'm all right with that." I still wasn't very satisfied, but we needed to know what the Profithians were doing. Scar pulled out her hourglass, and we headed back to Demise Cry. End of chapter 11.